So he is firing the last salvos he has, which is to print money all over the globe. And he'll do it. He wrote a paper in 2002 that says, look, this is when he got the word moniker, Helicopter Ben. Well, back then everybody chuckled at that, go, Helicopter Ben, oh my God. If he has to, he'll just float over America and throw dollars down out of helicopters, and we used to giggle about that. Well, now his new name is not Helicopter Ben, it's Carpet Bomber Ben. And that, you read his article, 2002, read it. He's got about 9 things that he knows he can do to stop deflation. And the 8th and 9th one, well, the 9th one is, not only can he buy back all the mortgage-backed securities and all the treasuries, he claims in that article that he can buy back all the foreign debt in the world too. Yeah, it's his stuff. Read it yourself. I did. So that's what the game plan is. We will not tolerate deflation in this country for more than a few months. And the only way out of that is to just print enough money to scare people that we're going to have runaway inflation. Here's the second risk I have besides the 60 new morons in Congress, and that's this. All of you, if you listen to Wall Street, are betting that QE2 is on the way, and that the Federal Reserve is going to buy treasuries to lower the longer bond rates for a variety of reasons. They're doing that for one reason, to make the price of oil go up. That's called creating inflation. That's why oil is very interesting to me. That's why people are buying gold, because they're betting that Ben Bernanke will print he'll print $5 trillion easy, $10 trillion if he has to avoid deflation at every cost. And so, in my mind, I would prefer oil and energy and farmland and real estate rather than buying gold. It accomplishes pretty much the same thing. In fact, I've been telling people for 5 years, if you're even thinking about buying gold, I would just recommend you take cocaine instead, because at least you feel good before it kills you. Don't forget, folks, gold is a speculative commodity. Don't forget that. Even you folks that are registered and financial advisors, keep in mind that 90% of the people that invest in commodities lose money. Simple as that. Same logic, the same reason that people are buying gold. You can accomplish virtually all of those objectives by owning farmland in America or oil reserves. I'm not sure about natural gas. It's a different ballgame. The bottom line is everybody's moving to try to buy assets that are priced in dollars, thinking that dollars will become cheaper. And so as Ben Bernanke prints more and more trillions of dollars, the value of the U.S. dollar will decline. And so what happens is that means that all the commodities we buy around the world will get more expensive. So oil will get more expensive, the hard commodities. Look at what's going on in the commodities market. I don't have time to really pay attention to that. But on that long flight out here, I looked at the Wall Street Journal in the commodities section to see what the cash prices year over year are. I had no idea where wheat and cotton and corn and virtually every commodity on the planet has gone up in value dramatically, and that's all because of Ben Bernanke's threat to print enough money to destroy the value of your savings. Most of your investors, you know it, you could tell me more than me, but I'm out 3 times a week doing this 100 times a year, setting at tables just like here, visiting people. I know exactly what they're worried about too. They're worried about runaway inflation and a government devaluing their savings. And so everybody's trying to figure out, how do I preserve the value of my savings when it's in U.S. dollars, and I have a Fed chair that said out loud he'll print every dollar he has to create inflation, and at the same time preserve my capital from a devaluation of my currency. So anyhow, that's the big picture. And here's the thing. Here's the reason for my optimism. And I'll show you that, and then we have challenges that have to be addressed. I'm confident that we're on the way to turning the corner economically, but we still have hard work to do yet. And so I just showed here that, number one, the U.S. economy produced 278,000 jobs last year. All right, that's government jobs and as well as private sector. I know it's not much, but the other part was, and I know a lot of your clients, whether you live in Connecticut, you live in Laguna Beach, 30% of your real estate portfolio is Texas. So I just want to give you some encouragement there, because the latest numbers that came out in August, Texas produced 48% of all the new jobs in the country. That's why people are still allocating assets toward Texas and the growth. And there's no mystery here. This is what quantitative easing looks like, folks. This is what a depression looks like. What we saw in the 30s was you had a major collapse in all commodity prices. And that's what Ben Bernanke is determined to see that that doesn't happen again. So look what happened. Oil prices were falling from 140 down to 38, and drilling activity started to go down, and then there comes the quantitative easing thing, and look what happened. Gold oil went from 38 bucks to $81 like it is this morning. Natural gas was $1.90 then. It went up to $5 and since worked its way back down. But that's the power of Ben Bernanke to threaten the markets with rampant printing of money. It causes people to go into commodities, which in turn creates inflation. That's his whole deal here, is I want to do anything I can to create inflation. Here's the principal risk. I've got to get back to it again. Here's his principal risk. He's already announced quantitative easing. How much do you think he's going to print? What do you think? It seems to me that everybody's kind of latched on to, oh, I don't know, surely not $1 trillion again. Maybe 500 billion in QE2. Well, whatever that is, the market's already priced that in. The 10-year Treasury dropped to 235, and it's now back up to 250 again. See, all that's worn off already. His threat of quantitative easing has already worn off, and whatever your consensus is, let's say everybody on the planet decided 500 billion. What do you think the market will do when he comes out and says, we're not going to do 500 billion, we're only going to do 300 billion? Or worse yet, what happens if he comes out and says, we're going to do $1 trillion. You thought I was going to do 5, but I'm going to surprise you and come out and say I'm going to do $1 trillion, and all of a sudden everybody goes, wow, extra quantitative easing. And that's supposed to drive the 10-year Treasury down, because that's what his job, that's why he's doing it. What happens if he comes out and announces more quantitative easing after the election, and it's less than 500,000? Or worse yet, what happens if he comes out and says it's going to be $1 trillion, and the 10-year Treasury starts to go up toward 4% instead of going down? There's the biggest risk I see for every investor, because everybody knows there's fiscal policy with Congress, there's monetary policy with Bernanke. Everybody knows that Congress is incapable of doing anything, and so that means that our entire faith and hope in the future rests with Ben Bernanke with his last cannon shot of quantitative easing. And the last time they announced QE1, if you'll notice, the 10-year Treasury went up north of 4% after they announced it, and then they put that policy on hold. Check back in your newspapers and see what happened there. QE1 was $1 trillion, and we're going to buy treasuries and we're going to buy mortgages. Well, they started buying treasuries, and the 10-year went up north of 4%. And then they said, you know what? We're going to keep buying the mortgages, but we're going to temporarily put on hold the treasury buying experience. And as soon as they stopped buying them, the rate dropped down to where it bottomed out at 2.35 a couple of weeks ago. So we have some history that's only 2 years old, that when the Fed starts buying 10-year treasuries, the rate actually goes up. So those are the two things. Before I get totally excited about the future of our economy, I want to get past those two events. Here's the best news of all. Corporate profits are up. You don't need a PhD, you don't even need a bachelor's degree to forecast job growth. It's very simple. It's just when profits are up, people hire. When profits are flat, they stop hiring. And when profits go down, they fire people and keep firing. This is the good news. Here's more good news. People are deleveraging their balance sheet. They got up to a point where they had 14% of their income in debt service. It's unprecedented. We never should have got that far. The normal range is 11 to 12. This slide goes back to 1980. And you can see here, we are rapidly delevering. And it looks like to me, if we keep this trajectory up, a year from now, Americans will have right-sized their balance sheet to the point where they want to come out and buy a house or a car because they want to, not because of some government tax credit to make them do it. About another year from now, this is called deleveraging your balance sheet. Back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, silly me, I thought that meant you just live within your means and pay down your debt and grind it out over time.